with episode 31. Okay, that's good. Alright. Let me post into places. Needs to just be November. I'm ready for my vacation.
Bro, you got a long way to go. I'm just,
Right?
just want to keep it real with you. You got a lot of mental games left.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm probably taking, like, a staycation next month.
I just booked tickets to Vegas today.
Vegas, baby. Ednar's he's a regular around here.
I kind of have become one.
Oh, yeah?
But man, nothing's going to beat that Mayweather McGregor fight weekend.
That was
insane.
There was like leftovers for weeks in Vegas of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we were at Bellagio for the whole thing, and we're just like, this is like the epicenter of chaos.
Two very polarizing crowds.
Surprised I didn't see more fights.
Most fight fans are small.
Yeah, you kind of went robo there, so I don't know if it's still acting up or not.
I think he's frozen.
I just dropped, but I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, he's back.
That was weird.
You were stuck with a very perplexed look on your face. And yeah, kind of like that.
I have funny faces.
I mean, I thought you were just, like, talking about numbers and you just got frozen, like, mid-thought.
Like, I actually crashed, like...
Right. Get a hard reboot.
Something interesting came up in the game, and you're just like, ooh, I'm going to just stop and not move and watch this.
Mm-hmm. Alright, let me get out the tweeters. That is good to go. Pop out the chat. Then I should be good. Alright. Alright, you guys good to go?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah!
I'll take that as a yes from Slambo.
I'm going to go with a quieter... Yeah!
That's my island expectations.
Let's do it!
Alright. Queuing up the sounder now.
You are listening to the Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Totally Drunk, Spider, and Slambo.
What is up, guys, and welcome to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye and all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 31, we're going to go around the league discussing the latest Overwatch League news. We'll share your answers to our community question of the week, let you know what we took away from Stage 3 Week 4, and get you primed for the Stage playoffs. But before we get into the news and introduce you to my co-hosts, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out in our Twitch chat with us here tonight, and thank all of our repeat listeners. And, back with me yet again, after a very long week, is my soulmate Slambo. Slambo, how are you doing, brother?
What's up, nerds? Yes, I am alive. I woke up this morning. I felt super sick. I actually didn't even go into work or didn't work at all. And feeling better, obviously, because I'm here. So I was like, I'm not missing another episode. Even if I had to have like a bucket next to me and have to mute my mic, I was gonna be on this episode. I was gonna be here, and I made it. So I'm tanking through. I'm doing good. I'm also been having a little bit of fun watching Overwatch this past week because there were some amazing matches. There were some close matches, some upsets, some that personally stung me a little bit harder than they probably should have, but it was just kind of a special, entertaining.
Slambo
I
locked up.
think he's frozen.
Slambo froze. All right, well, we'll move on as he's Dirtface for the moment. Well, normally we have Spider here, but he is out with a sick kid. But that's not going to stop me from ridiculing him as Slambo rejoined. So it's from his fracturedness being static there. But Spider, hashtag Forever Third. He is not here tonight. And, I did send out, like, a community poll earlier in the week, and it seems like our community has a lot more faith stored within the Shanghai Dragons than Spider when it comes to the Loose Intrigue. So, like, if you guys have been following the Overwatch League, which, I mean, I'm sure that you have, because they're listening to this podcast, which is Overwatch League specific. I don't know why you'd be listening to us if you don't watch the league. Regardless, if you're still here, we still appreciate you. But, Shanghai has not won a game. And Spider has been in third place in our Pick'em League throughout the entire season. And I basically just asked the community which streak is going to end first. And the last time I checked, I think it was like 10 votes in favor of the Shanghai Dragons. And 2 votes in favor of Spider. So, yeah, take that for what you will. And I would ask Spider how he feels about that. But he is not here. But who is here is my co-host from Heroes Never Die. And, just an all-around good dude, the Florida Mayhem fan himself. One of the few. Edinar, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. So you're saying Spider got 2 votes. So how did he vote for himself twice? That's the real question.
This guy's asking the real questions. Asking the real questions.
I get Spider voting for himself once. Did he steal a loved one's phone and vote for himself? I feel that's how it worked out. But no, it's been a great week. I mean, outside of the Mayhem and the Valiant, who are like my de facto second team, it was a good week. I didn't get to watch all the matches. I was out of town. If you pay attention to Heroes Never Die, I was out of town for work this weekend in the wonderful state of Iowa. Woo!
Yeah.
Iowa. So I just got back, so I've been slowly catching up, trying to get as many loot boxes in to try and get some of the skins, all that fun stuff before it ends in a couple hours?
Yep, today is the last day of Retribution, but, we really don't go a day without news. So, it was a pretty heavy news week this week around the league, so let's talk about some of the things that were announced this week. So, Stage 3 is wrapping up this week, and we did get the Stage 4 map pool announced. So, we just found this out via the Overwatch League website. And the order that the games are played has also seen a shift. We'll be opening Map 1 on hybrid maps, Game 2 being on Assault, Game 3 Control, and 4 Escort. So, looking at our hybrid maps, we have the return of my personal favorite, Kings Row, and Blizzard World on Assault. We have everyone's favorite map, Horizon Lunar Colony. Oof. And Tanamura. Control, we have Oasis, aka the bane of London Spitfire's existence, and Lijiang Tower, and then on Escort, we have Dorado and Watchpoint Gibraltar. So, we got Blizzard World and Horizon Lunar Colony, so another 2 maps that, a lot of the community just does not like, but, just remember what Kings Row means. That means we could finally get to see Kikiri on the Zarya, which has been something that a lot of people have been waiting to see. So, we know Shanghai is a very tough week this week. We'll get into that later. Is Stage 4 going to be the time for Shanghai to pick up their first win at NR?
No. I mean, they're gonna win. I don't know if they're gonna win right now or anytime soon. I think they have a specific map, but these are some interesting maps that they brought out. I mean, like you said, King's Row. I'm very interested to see if they run Guguri on Zarya. Like, everyone will stand up and cheer and freak out when Guguri like walks out of the checkpoint with Zarya in tow, and then she puts on a show to just destroy people.
Yeah, I mean, that's really one of the few maps that Zarya is pretty good on. And, you know, Slambo, you and I have been following the scene for a while, so I am sure as he drops... Whatever, we're not going to go to Slambo right now. But, you know, King's Row has been a staple of competitive Overwatch since, you know, closed beta. That was really, like, the first map that was played on the competitive scene. So anytime it's back in the rotation, I'm very happy. And I mean, that's another one of those really good Widowmaker maps. So I'm excited to see that. And, you know, we could see, you know, more Hanzo play also on King's Row. But really, like, as a whole, you know, there always seems to be two maps in particular that really not too many people are fans of. So this one is not going to be exception, as Slambo has rejoined us. Hey! So, Slambo, as I was saying before you had dropped the video, how excited are you to see the competitive Overwatch staple map of King's Row being back into the rotation for Stage 4?
King's Row is bread and butter Overwatch. I think it's a very easy map to spectate. We used to call it like the litmus test. It was the map that really showed us which team was better, especially over the course of time, because of how simple it was. But I don't know. So again, it's fun, it's simple, it's easy to watch. It is going to be some really cool opportunities with Brigitte, you know, now coming in the mix, particularly on defense and offense on King's Row. I think for that entire map almost. So for the boot potential, for the tight corners, we're going to see a lot more death ball, and she's going to complement that certainly. So for a number of reasons, I'm very happy to see that. I'm not as excited to see Watchpoint Gibraltar. For some reason, that's a map that's very snowbally to me. And as every phase of that map feels like a completely different map at times from an offensive and defensive perspective. So I wish I enjoyed that map more. And that's another one of those staples of early on Overwatch. Mm-hmm. But for my money, King's Row, King's Row is king, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, we'll talk more about the impact that Brigitte is going to have within the Overwatch League probably next week before we go into the next stage. Because, obviously, you know, the new season of competitive just dropped on the ladder today. And, I honestly don't want to play comp this season because I am petrified of the incoming meta shift that is going to happen, which we'll get into at another time. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. But, you know, what I am looking forward to is being able to vote for our Overwatch League MVP, guys. The voting has officially opened up, so voting is going to end on June 17th. And, you know, this is interesting because, like, a quarter of the vote, so 25% of the award, is going to be up to the fans, with the rest of the vote being decided by the Overwatch League broadcast team. So the winner of the MVP will be announced when the Overwatch League playoffs begin on July 11th. So in order to vote, all you have to do, guys, is tweet, you know, your MVP's name and their battle tag with hashtag OWLMVP. If you go on the MVP Overwatch League site, you'll see, like, there's a daily leaderboard posted there. You can see, like, the top 5. And the last time I checked, I don't think it had changed at all. We have Carpe currently locking down that top spot. We have Jonak in 2nd, Fleta in 3rd, Libero in 4th, and Effect in 5th. So, I mean, I'm really not surprised to see any of these 5 within the top 5. You know, Effect being on the field, like, maybe he might be the exception, but he has been the one bright light on the Dallas field this season. But Carpe, you know, he's been super consistent, but I wanna get your guys' opinion on this. Who do you think so far has been the MVP for the Overwatch League? Who would you cast your vote on?
Let me first just jump in here and say, you're saying that he burned bright for the Dallas Fuel. I think Dumpster Fires burned pretty bright. So XQC, you know, he was lighting it up this year too. We can't count him out too soon.
He already won the World Cup.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he can't win back to back.
Okay, my bad. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think that, to me, the one thing I like to point out here is that they have 25% of the weighting is from the fan vote. So they're trying to keep a control in so we don't have another XQC scenario or it's not a popularity contest. We're not going to turn into Dancing with the Stars or anything, right? But I think that's smart. So, again, I want to call that out. And the people that are watching these games, that are sitting in meetings, that are analyzing, that are having the discussions, that meet with the players, I think that their vote should mean more, even though they're a smaller elite group. But I like the way the voting is broken down. And I'm kind of surprised by Carpe. And, you know, the Philadelphia fan base has just been pretty rabid, pretty intense fan base. So I think that also makes sense. I think Carpe has been a phenomenal player. But how about Jonak? You know, Jay Jonak coming up with second place, a support? What's going on? I love it. Beautiful, beautiful.
He's not a support. He's a DPS.
Well, in your own head, that's fine. But if no, I mean, I listen, if he would start for me, and in the new meta, we might consider him the DPS support player. We don't know what's going to happen here in a couple of weeks with Brigitte. So anyway, it's Ednar's turn.
I mean, all right. So all right. Effect shouldn't be in the top 5. We'll just get that out there. I don't think Fleta should be in top 5 because, you know, they don't actually play him on half of the maps due to coaching decisions. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Carpe was a little bit strange for me to be number 1. I agree with Slambo. Jonak should probably be 1. Libero should be up there. I'm surprised Surefour is not up there. Not only because he's good, but also because it's fan voting. I was surprised Surefour wasn't up there, but if my vote would go to Jonak.
I like it. Yeah, and you know, we kind of look at some of the newer additions, and we've had a lot of people that have come in kind of like mid-stage, so I'm really not surprised to see some of the newer sign-ins actually make the cut. But, you know, Gagiri, like, for all intents and purposes, like, her stats since she's been in the league on D.Va have been at the top of the charts. So I think she would probably be the only mid-season pickup that you might be able to argue should be within the top 5. But, like, I honestly wasn't surprised to see Carpe on the top. He's been pretty consistent throughout all of the season. And, you know, Philadelphia, they've been pretty scrappy, and more times than not, Carpe has been one of the clutchest players in the Overwatch League. But the one that I'm surprised isn't on the list is Striker. Like, where's the Boston love at? Striker is not on this list despite being neck and neck with Saebyeolbe throughout, you know, the past couple of months. And, you know, that's another one. Like, how Libero over Saebyeolbe, I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, as the season progresses, I think Jonak will eventually overtake Carpe, and I think he'll get the fan vote when all is said and done. But be sure to cast your vote, guys. You know, hit that hashtag OTBLMVP, cast your vote, let them know who you want to vote for. Don't vote for XQC. I'm pretty sure you have to vote for someone that's currently in the league and not a former player, so there is that.
If he was eligible to be voted, he'd be number 1. And we all know it. He'd be number 1. So, I mean, yeah.
Well, at least this time we don't have to worry about people, like, putting Flower in with the wrong name, like we did for the World Cup, and then they had to, like, fix it, like, midway through the vote-in. So, yeah, there is that. But, you know, speaking of Boston, guys, you know, we do have some history being made, and, you know, potentially even more on the horizon, because Boston are only 2 wins away from going undefeated through a full stage, which is a feat that no team has been able to accomplish so far within the Overwatch League. Now, who stands in their way from making more history? We have both LA teams. So this week they face a Valiant as well as a Gladiators. So not an easy week for Boston Uprising. And, they have broken the longest win streak in OWL history, as they did pick up their 12th straight win this past week. So, we talked a lot about Boston in the past, and I don't know, since, you're normally not on here, I just want to get your thoughts on seeing the progression from this team, seeing as at the start of the season, a lot of the community pretty much had counted them out from the get-go, just based off of the names, and lack of names for that matter, on the roster in itself. Slambo and I were both in the same boat. We both pegged him to be on the very bottom for the most part. I think a lot of people had him 11th or 12th overall, but here they are, on the verge of potentially going undefeated in the stage, despite New York's dominance and only dropping a few games overall this season.
I mean, up until probably a week or two ago, I still didn't believe in Boston. Like, I was just like, nah. Like, after the Dreamcasper situation that occurred and he got kicked off the team, I thought they were kind of riding that wave of, all right, we lost Dreamcasper. We're going to show people we can still compete without him. And I think they were riding that wave, and I was like, all right, I'm just waiting for them to come down from that. And then they never came down from that. I think Striker is just one of those, nobody was talking about Striker before, and now Striker's in talks to be, top 2-3 tracers. I mean, Sebeobi is the best tracer in the league. Anyone who disagrees, come fight me. But yeah, fly to Wisconsin. Just come on. You have to come through Iowa. So I don't think anyone wants to do that.
Everyone shows up asleep.
Yeah. Like, oh man, I got a lot of corn for you guys. But I mean, mistakes stepping up, really, like, coming out from, like, basically from nothing to almost being as good, if not better, than Dreamcasper on a lot of the hit scan heroes. And then I know you're in love with Dante on Sombra, but Mistakes is a good Sombra. So he can be good. And then you got Gams too, and then Kelix, all that stuff. I think the team is gonna win out this week. I think they're gonna prove everyone that they belong, and then they're gonna be like a force to be reckoned with in the next stage. Yes, I said stage, not season this time.
I'm proud of you. I was waiting to see if you were going to flub that or not.
Better than me.
This is true. But, speaking of Boston, Boston has really been cutting down that competition as of late. And, they'll look to shave a little bit more off because they do have a new sponsorship deal that we got to talk about, guys. That is right. They have signed a sponsorship with a Boston-based company, Gillette. I mean, this shouldn't come as a surprise, really, based on, who owns the Boston Uprising, because, yeah, the New England Patriots Stadium is named after Gillette. I mean, it's Gillette Stadium. And, Robert Kraft owns the Patriots. He also owns, or the Kraft Group owns the Boston Uprising. And, Gillette will just serve as, their official shaving product supplier, which is... it's like, okay, but it is what it is. But, their practice jerseys and the facility will bear the Gillette logo. They got, like, more social media and digital activations expected in the near future as well. But, like, really, like, this one was, I figured that they would go to Gillette. I mean, it just made sense because it's in Boston, it's local, and Kraft's involvement. But, like, when you compare it to some of the other, sponsorships that we have for some of the teams, it does kind of feel a little bit out of left field in that regard, just because it is completely different from what we consider to be, the norm.
Yeah, almost something like with nerd culture. Also, how long did it take you to come up with that segue?
Not long.
The shaving? No? All right. But no, this is probably the biggest individual team sponsorship I think we've seen. Because the other ones are what? Jack in the Box? I think it's Jack in the Box for Houston.
For Dallas, yeah.
Oh, for Dallas. Ash vs. the Evil Dead for...
Which is canceled.
Which is canceled, so they need another sponsor. So Gillette is by far and away the biggest individual team sponsor. But like you said, I mean, the Patriots and Robert Kraft and Gillette go hand in hand almost, so it's not surprising in the least.
Yeah, it's not surprising, but I mean, this is just going to become the norm here soon enough. We're going to see more of these brands attach onto teams. They gain a little bit more confidence when they see a company like Gillette also attaching on to the esports division of the Kraft Group. So definitely some validation, definitely a good sign for the future. And I mean, if nothing else, we're going to have some very freshly shaved, handsome players from the Boston Uprising.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but, like, whenever I go into Candale, like, I buy Sour Patch Kids. So, like, I don't know, maybe this will go get me to buy, Gillette razors. I don't know.
Subliminal advertising at its finest.
Yeah, that's just how it works.
And not one person on the Boston Uprising has a beard or facial hair. I feel they need to have a team beard growing contest. And
Just
then
so they can
shave it off. And then shave it off using a Gillette razor.
There you go. You heard it here first. I mean, they got to get put to work somehow. And, Florida Mayhem have been also putting in some work because they did add on to their staff by picking up an assistant coach and analyst. So, if you've been watching their Ascend YouTube series, you probably already know this. But if you don't follow that, they did make the announcement during their latest episode of Ascend. So, joining them is... Yeah, I mean, that's the guy's name. It's Y-E Triple H. I mean, I don't know how... Yeah, I mean, you gotta overpronounce the H's. And this is a former player. He was a flex and team captain on Prestige Worldwide. Now, Prestige Worldwide was pretty dominant in that Tier 2 scene. They were later acquired by Rockets Esports. And, this is a team that really got off the ground in the Academy weekly tournaments that were going on over, last summer. They took home first place in the first Open Division that was held in North America. And, yeah, it ended up leaving the team after they had disbanded. And that was after, they finished second place in Open Division Season 2. So, pretty good success on the Tier 2 scene across the board. He later then moved on to coach Energy Esports, which is over in Contenders for North America, which is still going on. We got the playoffs coming up in a couple weeks, and Energy is the San Francisco Shocks Academy team. And they did qualify for the playoffs, but in true Energy fashion, they got knocked out of the first round when they lost 3-1 to Toronto Esports, who just so happened to be Boston Uprising's Academy team, and my pick to win NA Contenders, which we'll cover that on the back cap, obviously, because that is our Path to Pro show. But, yeah, is already with the team in Los Angeles. And, we've seen Florida Mayhem, over the course of the season, add more pieces to their puzzle. They had Mineral, really being, the only coach for the team for a while. They only had 6 players with the Misfits roster. And, they did pick up a few players. They picked up Awesome Guy. They picked up Saya player. They had signed Ryder to the coaching staff as well. And, we saw how quickly we got to see some improvements from Florida once they had picked up Ryder. So, as our local Florida Mayhem fan, Edinar, what are you expecting to see from an additional man on their staff?
I mean, I guess the first thing that stuck out to me is he's an assistant coach and analyst. I think they're bringing him in to analyze their gameplay and see where they can improve the most. Not to necessarily coach them in their gameplay during a match or during scrims or anything like that. He's going to be analyzing, reporting back to the head coach, and that's why they brought him in. It's not. I don't know if he'll have much interaction with the team per se, as it. I guess it's kind of like one of those in football. One of the coordinators up in the booth who can oversee everything but doesn't actually interact with the players, talks to the head coach relays the messages. I think that's kind of what he's going to do. And they need it. They really do. Because, they have not shown much improvement. And they need to. And so hopefully this will help them tighten up ship a little bit, tighten up, some of their pushes, which have been ugly. Some of their positioning, which has also been ugly. some of their everything else, which has been ugly.
Everything except Widow.
Everything except Widow in the past few weeks. So
I will admit that I do like seeing Florida at least be adding on to their staff. There was this point early on in the season, or before really we even started, we were all talking about what's the best formula to have a successful Overwatch team. Is it that small roster that you just perfect? Is it adding more? And clearly we've seen the answer is not only is it we need more players on a roster than 6, you need more of that support staff, more eyes on the screen, to your point, Ednar. And so this is all good, but at least I led with my serious answer. Here's my joke answer, is that I thought this person was brought on to be a positive reinforcement coach. It's just all the time, just
he's just gonna stand behind them and say,
job.
yeah.
That's
every
it. That's
time
their
they make a
job
play.
is like seriously, like they're fighting and who's right? Yeah, that's no one ever wins just because it's always as the answer. So all right, I'm done.
You bring up the best formula for a winning Overwatch League team, and the answer to that formula is actually bare hands, because, I mean, look at what New York has done, and this is completely kind of out of the blue news that dropped earlier, I think it was today even, and that is that the New York Excelsior have parted ways with their director of player personnel, bare hands, and this is really kind of weird. Obviously New York has been very dominant throughout the season. They've only dropped a couple of games throughout the first 3 stages. And, we're also getting into the playoffs here this week as well. So, bare hands was really one of the driving forces behind putting the team together. You can't understate what he did. And I'm going to read a quote that was posted on the competitive Overwatch forums in this thread, and that was from ZP. And he said, this came out of left field. Bare hands GM work in the offseason was quite literally second to none in putting together a very strong New York Excelsior team. On the bright side, you can't have a stronger resume than what he has now when looking at future Overwatch League teams, or even just replacing GMs for current Overwatch League teams. Okay, guys, so we kind of have to ask ourselves, well, was there something behind the scenes? That seems kind of unlikely. Was there another opportunity on the horizon? Maybe. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, though. Is Bare Hands going to be at the helm for one of the Overwatch League expansion teams for Season 2? Because to me, that is the only type of opportunity that I can think of that would really want him to drop now so he could start, planning out and getting those pieces in place so he can just come out of the gate swinging at that point.
I'll let Slambo go first as he's yawning.
No, good timing. Thank you for segueing in my yawn. I can't agree with you more, Totem, that there has to be something else at play. This is not the Kai situation where there's possible performance issues, there's possibly relational issues. We didn't really know, but we didn't know what the problem was, but we knew there was a problem. It has been pretty quiet with Bare Hands, and a lot of people, if I can use the right word, revere him in the GM game, in the player personnel game within the Overwatch League. I saw an article within the last month just talking about how good of a job he did. I think it was from Monty or from Doa, and then ZP echoes it here in the comments. So certainly not the last we'll see of Bare Hands, but if I'm running an expansion team, I'm offering him top dollar to evaluate my talent, to really give us a shot to show up. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it actually comes down to money. That's the first thing that popped into my head is he wanted more money, and New York was like, you know what? We have the rosters. We have the players now. We have the up-and-coming talent. You've done a great job, but we don't want to pay you the money that this new expansion team or another team like, the Mayhem or Shanghai or another team that could benefit from having him is willing to throw at him. So I think a team approached him, said, we'll give you this. And he went back to New York, and they're like, sorry, we're not gonna match that. And that's when they decided to part ways. Because he's not leaving for a challenge. You're not leaving the best team for a challenge with another team without it being a boatload of money involved. So he's gonna resurface in season 2 with a new team.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. Whether it's a new team or not, kind of remains to be seen. But, there has been, some fielded interest in maybe getting a team over in Seattle, because we saw Trevor May tweeting about that. But if he wants to come to Chicago, we will be more than happy to have him. But yeah, it really just, came out of nowhere, and, on the website, they didn't really give a reason. It was just a really, small paragraph and nothing more, so it just kind of left everyone kind of just confused right now. So.
Really, I got a real love letter, impression from those 3 sentences. All that hard work Bare Hands put in. They gave him a 2 sentences. Forgive me, 2 sentences.
Wow.
Oh boy. No, it was a really dry. So there's definitely more to this story. I'm sure we'll find out later. But such a talented individual and such a unloving response from the New York Excelsior staff.
You know what would only make this better? Is if he just goes to Boston, goes to their rival. That would be perfect. You see Boston come in, they're undefeated this stage. New York has been getting pushed to game 5s. Pressure's getting to Jonak a little bit more, and they're kind of on edge right now. And you see Boston, they've looked pretty damn dominant, so I can just imagine that, just the story that would unfold. That would really bring more to that rivalry, which, for a while initially was only based on location, but now that Boston is kind of tilted, things more in their favor, it's really starting to heat up. I would just love for that to really be the thing that excels it to that next level for that feud in particular.
I'd love it. I would love it if he signed with Boston. And the next time they play, they don't announce it, but next time they play, he leads them out of the tunnel, and just a big middle finger, yep, I went to your rival. Deal with it.
Definitely a good story, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, I did send out a question of the week this week. We did not really get that many bites, so I feel like, our community needs to step up. They did not bring the spice this week, so I'm going to skip it and give everyone a second chance, because this was a perfect question, and then they even went over trash talking throughout some of the games this week. So people need to come back with the fire.
Totem, can I do one this week and then I'll come up with another one next week?
Absolutely. So,
all right.
With that in mind, Slambo, we had asked, just like any sport, the Overwatch League isn't without its share of friendly trash talk. Choose any team or current player. What's your best roast?
All right, so this is not great, but my little brother is a fan of the Gladiators, so he's a big Surefour fan. So I say I really enjoy watching Surefour play Widow, but he's stuck in Platinum, and that's just gross. Now, I have to explain my joke because it's not good enough, because Surefour's hair is platinum silver. He's got that awful platinum hair. So I'm trying to do a play on platinum with the hair and the division. This is why I will be back next week, ladies and gentlemen. Did not land.
That was a Overwatch dad joke if I've ever heard one.
So here's the thing. He is the dad.
Totem's gonna tell you. So I wasn't.
That wasn't there, but I wanted to point out the fact that you even had to explain it shows you the level of the joke in itself. So
yeah, that's what I mean. The moment I started explaining, it's like this is gone.
This is not gonna work.
Okay, so here's the plan. So I'm going to repost this question in the Discord and on our Twitter. And if we don't get responses, I am going to pick every single team and roast them on our next show. That is my plan. I'll do it all in under a minute. I'll just go through all 12. So hopefully, our community, bring some of that fire because, what is sports without a little bit of trash talk? I mean, they go hand in hand, so we need to see a bit more engagement from our fans out there. But with that being said, guys, we got to talk about the power rankings. We have had shifts up and down, and actually, 1 through 9 are completely different this week, which is pretty interesting. So, with that being said, I will say the bottom 3 teams first. And if you have been listening to our podcast, this will not come as a surprise to you, because these teams have not really moved. In last place, locking down number 12. The Spider of the Overwatch League, the Shanghai Dragons.
Ooh, that hurts.
It burns.
And number 11, Dumpster Fire. That was fuel. And in number 10, your very own Florida Mayhem.
Hey, we're above the dumpster fire.
You
I'm
are.
good with that.
Yeah, that's something. All right, but going from 1 through 9, guys, moving up a 1 spot, coming in at number 1 for the first time, we have the Boston Uprising, winners of 12 straight. New York dropped 1 spot to the number 2. We have Philadelphia moving up 2 spots. They came in at 3rd. London Spitfire dropped to 4th. LA Valiant dropped to 5th. The Houston Outlaws bumped up 1. They came in 6th. Seoul Dynasty dropped to 7th. LA Gliders bumped up 1 to the 8th spot. And then the Shock dropped to the 9th slot. So, there's been a few weeks where there's only been a little bit of movement at the top. And then this week, it was just straight everywhere. This is, the first time this has happened. I think, maybe on average, we have, 4 or 5 teams that might, shift around, but not 9 out of the 12. I mean, that was a pretty huge seismic shift there. So we'll see whether or not Boston can keep up that momentum. I will say, right now, this is a conversation I had with Spider. It's what do we value? Do we value who's done better in the long run, or do we value who is doing great currently? And based on how Boston has done, yes, you can absolutely argue, they deserve to be in the top spot, especially in the moment. I think I'm still favoring New York just based off of their consistency. I don't know how Boston is going to do in the upcoming meta shift. Now, granted, they do have 5 supports, and it looks like we are going to get triple support meta. So maybe they won't be hit as much, but it's definitely going to be a big story going into Stage 4. But before we can get into Stage 4, we have to wrap up Stage 3. So let's talk about what went down last week in Stage 3, Week 4 of the Overwatch League. So on Wednesday, we saw the Boston Uprising defeat the Shanghai Dragons 3-1. We saw the Houston Outlaws defeat the LA Valiant 3-1. And then the Florida Mayhem defeated the Dallas Fuel 3-1. On Thursday, we saw the LA Gladiators defeat London Spitfire 3-2. We saw New York Excelsior defeat San Francisco Shock 3-1. And the Seoul Dynasty edged out the Philadelphia Fusion 3-2. And I don't know about you, Slambo, but oh man, my heart was racing in that series by just the sheer amount of defense that we saw. That was nerve-wracking.
It was, and it just felt like every time there'd be a tough hold, I was like, oh, well, this will be over quick. And then the other team would turn around and do another great hold. A particular Numbani was pretty intense on that topic. But I was so sad. I picked Philadelphia in the pick'em 3-2. I knew it was going to be close, but I gave the edge to Philly. Trying not to be a soulmate homer and dum-dum, and look what happened. So I'm sad.
Well, we'll see whether or not you make the same mistake when we go up against London this week, since, we've kind of dropped the last 16 maps. All right, well, on Friday...
Yeah, I'm a Mayhem fan. Get used to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're laughing, but you're allowed to,
Yeah.
You're allowed to.
0-16. We call that, week 3.
Well, I mean, when you're only looking good against Dallas, I mean... You gotta hold on to what victories you can, I guess. But looking back at Friday, guys, we saw Boston Uprising sweep Dallas Fuel 4-0. We saw the LA Gladiators defeat the Houston Outlaws 3-2. And the LA Valiant defeated the Florida Mayhem 3-1. And to cap off the week on Saturday, we saw the London Spitfire defeat the San Francisco Shock 4-0. The New York Excelsior swept the Seoul Dynasty 4-0. That was rough. Especially after taking them to map 5s in the last 2 series. And then we had a very interesting series between the Philadelphia Fusion and the Shanghai Dragons, and we were so close. If only Shanghai prepared for a map 5. They did not. They got 100-0'd on both rounds in map 5, so Fusion took that one 3-2. But the confusion has struck us yet again as they did get pushed to that map 5 against Shanghai. And it seems like every now and again, that confusion meme just rears its ugly head for Philadelphia. They looked primed to make a run for the playoffs, and, there is still a chance that they do make it, but, not 4-0 in Shanghai, like a lot of the community expected them to, does put a damper on that playoff hope. And, they lucked out last stage. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, they totally deserve that, because they needed a ton of help along the way. So many things had to go right in order for Philadelphia to make the playoffs. And, history might repeat itself, it might not, but, they were not in control of their destiny, and they're not in control of it for the second stage in a row. Now, a clear win against the Dragons, that would have put them pretty close to that map differential with the Gladiators. But now they're on that outside looking in, and Philly is basically in the spot where they have to win all 8 maps to really have a shot at getting that playoff spot.
And that's just, frankly, going to be too tall of an order. Against Dallas, I can definitely see that being a sweep. Not to get into next week, but they're going to come up against the Valiant, and they're not going to sweep the Valiant. They're just not. The Valiant are going to win a few maps, so... Yeah, sorry. That's just I feel bad for the Fusion. They are the confusion once again, and a team that I certainly have enjoyed watching. Again, very much high on the enjoyment side of things, but I do not have a lot of faith for them to be able to get into the top 4 as we end this stage.
Yeah, definitely not. They lost on their best game mode, which is hybrid. That was on Blizzard World, and I guess you can put an asterisk next to that because it is BW. I mean, we have seen some really wonky things happen on the old iteration of the map. But this marked the 6th time in 8 matches where the Fusion have gone to a map 5. This is a team that always goes the distance, much like their contenders counterpart in, the Fusion University. And in all of these matches, they have dropped the escort map. I don't even think they've taken the escort map this entire stage. So, whatever is going on, part of it has to do with the fact that they just can't win on escort. But, you look at the control maps in this one, and Nepal was by far the closest one throughout this series against Shanghai. But then we go to Oasis, and it's just a completely different game. Shanghai just looked unprepared during that tiebreaker map. So I don't know if it was just a lack of them just not figuring out they would go to him at 5, or maybe they just haven't put the time into Oasis, but they looked completely outclassed, during the stretch on Oasis, because they didn't get, control of the point on either route. They got 100-0'd in both cases, but, Philadelphia, they've had times where, they come out, they 4-0, they look good, and then lately it's been a lot of, it's kind of like the Gladiators effect, because the Gladiators are kind of going through the same thing. When they win, they look dominant, but when they don't win, it's mostly in map 5s, basically. So they either win in dominating fashion, or they're kind of middle of the road, and then that's where the map differential really kills teams like this. It kind of seems like this is a team, just like Gladiators, that at times is very, flash in the pan with the way they go about doing things.
It's exhausting to watch, but it's also fun. And a lot of time when I look at my pick'ems, it's a trend. I went back and kind of looked at my games. The Gladiators, I always pick to keep it really close, and pick to take maps off teams they shouldn't take maps off of, because that is their MO. So I can't believe they survived both the games they did this week. It wasn't just, I mean, that's tough momentum to come back from, and to do it twice in a week and avoid reverse sweeps. That is a testament to their mental strength. And I think they've got a lot of confidence behind Fisher right now. Fisher really sets the tone for that team. He has a very aggressive style that is complementing extremely well right now with their DPS lineup, whatever the combination that they're running. But, you know, a fun team to watch and deserve of the top four. And I really want to see them kind of make it to the stage playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Fisher is the heart and soul of that team right now. I mean, say what you want, but man, I want to see them in because they bring an element of fun that you don't see in most other teams. Like when you watch it, you're like, oh, they could pull off some crazy stuff right now, and this would be amazing. Like I can just see that. If there was a team that would bust out Symmetra, it's them. It is totally them, and you know, and I love it, and it's working for them. So, I'm really hoping they make it.
Yeah, I mean, the Gladiators have been interesting too because, you know, it feels like they're in the same blueprint as Philadelphia right now. They keep going to them at fives. You know, as you mentioned, like they built 2-0 leads this week against London Spitfire and then to the Houston Outlaws, and they got forced them at fives in both cases. You know, they ended up winning both of those. And part of that was because for the Gladiators, they capitalize on, you know, Bonnie was doing a lot of overextending, going for the Resurrects. And in doing so, they didn't have the healing throughput. So Gladiators were able to basically punish that. You also had Bishu, who had one of his best series that we've seen from him against the Outlaws. And there was a particular play on Oasis Gardens that was really cool, that really, like, solidified where Bishu is right now. And I know Bishu really hasn't been in the discussion for, you know, a top-tier D.Va player, because a lot of that is going to, you know, Note and Meko and Poco and Gaguri, primarily. But Fisher had basically gone down early in one of the team fights on Oasis Gardens. And I think the Gladiators at the time were down 2 players. Shaz was on Moira. He got pressured down to about 20 hit points. He faded away behind Bishu. You know, Bishu protects him with the defense matrix, and then Bishu just clutches and ends up killing 3 on the point, which was absolutely absurd. And it's just not something we really get to see a lot from the D.Va players, especially when their back is against the wall, literally, because that's exactly what happened. But, you know, you brought up Fisher's aggression, and, you know, there are times where that does get punished. We saw him overextend on Route 66. That did end up costing the Gladiators the map. But, like, that Spitfire game was really great, because I love seeing the tank battle, especially when you compare Fisher and Gesture. I mean, those were the 2 tanks that were fighting for, you know, playtime on the London Spitfire, and that tank battle in particular did not disappoint. But the Gladiators are, you know, in it right now. Like, they have a pretty good chance at making the playoffs, and, you know, we got to talk about who is in right now. So, Boston and New York have both clinched their stage playoff spots, you know, with their respective wins in Week 4. Boston, decent chance, well, I'd say a good chance to go undefeated. It's not going to be easy, just based off of their matches, but it is doable. We have the LA Valiant and the LA Gladiators currently sitting in 3rd and 4th place, respectively. And then we have the Houston Outlaws, Philadelphia Fusion, Seoul Dynasty, and the San Francisco Shock still in contention, but a lot of those teams are going to need a little bit of help along the way in order to get 4th place. You know, we do have London, who is the unlikeliest of scenarios. You know, in order to actually make the playoffs, well, for one, the best record that they can get is 5-5. Probably not going to happen. They'd basically need to win out the remaining maps, on top of needing a lot of help along the way. We have the Valiant, who are 6-2 right now. Their map differential is the best out of, like, those teams kind of in the middle, at +13. So, in order, all they have to do is basically, like, finish in a better map differential this week than -4. And then they'll secure a spot in the finals. So, at this point, you can pretty much say that they're a lock. I think that's safe to say at this point. We have... I mean, they do face Boston, though, this week, and Philadelphia. So that's, like, really the biggest question mark. There is a chance that we could see the Valiant kind of taper off here in the very final week, so... That plus 13 map differential could go a little bit out the window. It might end up, maybe -8, -9. Good chance that could happen. Or +9.
That's not crazy, but I don't know. The Valiant have been a bit of a roller coaster at times too. This stage, we really saw them coming on strong, but they've taken a couple steps back over the past couple weeks. So I don't know. I could really see it going either way. Like they should be a shoe, and it should be an easy task at hand. But God, I can't wait to find out. They're definitely a storyline to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And then for the Gladiators, they are entering week 5, 5-3 right now. So they're a game back. Their map differential is decent. It's +5 currently. We have a lot of teams that are, like, hovering around 0, basically. And for the Gladiators, they need to go 1-1 this week with a map differential of +3 in order to secure their playoff spot. And if we look at their schedule, they face the Florida Mayhem. That's their first game. And then they face Boston. So, at this point, like, they need to 4-0 Florida. I mean, in all real...
take a map or two off Boston, to really feel comfortable,
It's still a tall order, so, we got a ton of different playoff scenarios that we could see. But how amazing would it be if we actually get to see both LA teams in the playoffs and only have one Korean team? I think that would surprise the hell out of everyone, because for the longest time, people have been hyping up London. And London has kind of... They've fallen on hard times, as has Seoul. Seoul is more than likely not making the stage playoffs again. They are playing... they are playing that long con to win it all at the end of the season.
Keep telling yourself that.
I will, to be honest with you.
As will I. Whatever helps me sleep at night is what I will stick with, and that is what I am sticking with. But
and then first round of the playoffs, they'll be like, what's a great idea? We're going to sit 3 of our 5 normal. We're going to sit Ryu Jae-hong and Fleta, and, we're going to put in the backups. Round 1. That's what I see going on.
Well, I mean, it's still better than watching the playoffs from the bench. I didn't. Your words do not affect me. But I don't know. I want to get your thoughts. Like, who do you see making the playoffs? Obviously we got Boston and New York in. Are you favoring the LA teams to get that 3rd and 4th spot?
I think it's too much of a hill to climb for the Valiant and the Gladiators not to make it in. Like Valiant don't even have to win both their matches, and they're gonna be in. They just need to not suck that much and still lose, and they'll still get in. And then the Gladiators, like you said, they have a 3-map differential. They just need to go 1-1, and they're playing the Mayhem round 1. I mean, they're gonna either 3-1 or 4-0 them. And if they do that, it's pretty much out of reach at that point. So I think the Valiant and the Gladiators are basically both above a 90% likelihood of getting into the playoffs. I mean, sorry, Outlaw Fusion, Seoul fans, it's just not happening for you this stage.
Yeah, I think, like, out of the teams that are kind of, like, on the brink, I think Houston would probably have the better chance at getting the playoffs. Not to say that they will, but, if you look at their schedule, they do face a Shock, which is a pretty winnable game. And then they face Seoul, and, Seoul has been on and off. Houston tends to play them very close, and it's kind of gone both ways if we look at past results. So it's not a complete stretch to say that Houston could end up getting that 4th spot, but I think it's pretty safe to say that Gladiators will go 1-1. So we're basically just looking at map differential at that point. So that one could really tilt either way. But I think like the top 3 are pretty much a lock at this point, and it'll be between the Gladiators and the Outlaws to determine who gets 4th place. But we're gonna be down to the wire again. But I just love the fact that we have, since we have expanded playoffs, that we have that many more teams still kind of in the hunt.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, actually, if I was to put a team that could sneak in above the LA teams, I'm going Fusion. And the reason I say this is purely on matchups. So they played Dallas Fuel map in the first map. I'm going to go with 4-0 on that one. I mean, they have the highest likelihood of 4-0ing Dallas Fuel. And then the last matchup of the week is Fusion versus Valiant. If the Valiant are already in it, I mean, you hate to say it, but it's just like any other sport. Like in the NFL, if you're already clinched a playoff spot, you're not playing your starters. You're not putting your full force into it. You're resting guys because the next day they're going to have to play a bunch. So you're not putting forth the effort that need be. And if the Valiant have already clinched a spot, Fusion can take advantage of that by, beating up on a weaker team because they're sitting bunny and they're sitting soon and, stuff like that. So they could sneak in, and with it being the last match right before the playoffs, that could be huge.
Yeah, I can see that. But, that will lead into our playoff primer. But, before we talk about the actual playoffs, we need to see how we get there to begin with. So that will lead into our Stage 3 Week 5 preview. And Slambo, you are our acting left guy for the week. So why don't you introduce us to the games that we'll be seeing?
That sounds good. We start Wednesday, May 4th at 4 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to kick it off with the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Dallas Fuel Totem. Is this, I mean, we've kind of talked about this a little bit through the course of tonight. Which side of the confusion is going to show up?
Okay, so Dallas, looking back at past series against Philadelphia, is 0-2. They have not yet taken a map off of Philadelphia in those 2 series, so they're 0-8. So, we've seen the Fusion struggle on escort maps, yeah. That's been throughout the stage, but, Effect is pretty much done for the stage. He's still in Korea. He's still resting up. We can have a heated argument about that later. That tends to happen on our Discord. It's a whole nother discussion.
Not talking about it.
But, like, Effect has been the elite Tracer player for Dallas Fuel. And we kind of got to see some other Tracer players on their roster. We did get to see AKM on Tracer a little bit this past week. He looked okay. It's decent. Not great, but okay. But if the Fuel couldn't beat the Fusion with their best player on the team, what does that really say about their chances in this series? Not looking too good. So with that in mind, I think the Fusion should have no problem coming out on top of this one over the Dallas Fuel. And I think that that winning map streak against Dallas is going to continue and extend, and they'll take it 4-0.
All right, then as we move into the 6 p.m. Pacific time slot, we've got Ednar's own Florida Mayhem versus up and down Los Angeles Gladiators team. So Ednar, will your Mayhem take a win off a very consistent Gladiators team, or will they do enough to keep themselves in the playoff race?
Mayhem have no shot. I'll just say that right now. I'm just gonna flat out say that. I mean, the Gladiators have too much going for them. They're coming off 2 good wins last week. This is do or die time for them. They're not gonna waste it by, playing one of the 3 worst teams in the league and being like, oh, we're going to softball it in. Now, I don't think it's going to be a 4-0 because actually, I mean, Florida has, I mean, they've actually won, 2 of their past 5 matches, but they haven't been 4-0'd in a while. And so I don't think they're going to get 4-0'd, even though LA really wants that. I think it will be a 3-1 in Florida, in Gladiators' favor. But the matchup to watch is going to be Surefour versus Saya. That's going to be a fun one to watch.
Definitely.
Just to see it, just to be like, all right, who's gonna outduel each other, and that's what I want to see from this. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, with Surefour being platinum. All right, I'm done. Okay.
Right. To explain that joke, we have to go back to before when Slambo had to.
Well, hey, listen, it worked the second time. That's all I know. I think you're dead right. It will be fun to watch, and I think that's kind of a good segue with this game. At 8 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Houston Outlaws versus the San Francisco Shock. So Houston is going to have their eye on this game. They have the playoff spot in mind. They're going to want to see how Los Angeles comes out, or whether they win or lose, or what that differential is at the end of that match is going to be very important. And they're going to be looking to aggressively take down the San Francisco Shock. It's a team that they should do pretty well with. I know that with Super and Architect, we expected to see a bit of a different Shock team. We haven't seen that at all. Still some growing pains there, I think. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But the Houston Outlaws are a team that is still alive in the playoff hunt. And again, every map is going to count, so you can expect them to bring everybody on their roster. I feel like Houston uses a lot of subs, but most of their subs are very particular and well. But I'm not sure Fact Fiction is really needs to be forced into the lineup right now. He just hasn't. He didn't play well last week, in particular in the matchup with the Gladiators, in my opinion. So, with that being said, 100% we're going to see the Houston Outlaws take down the San Francisco Shock, and because of how hungry and scary things are, that's going to be a 4-0. That's my prediction. They're going to be a 4-0 in Houston's favor to really ramp up the drama as we head into the next. As we move on to Thursday, May 5th, back at our 4 p.m. Pacific slot, we do have the San Francisco Shock versus the Florida Mayhem Totem. Remember, Ednar is here on the show, so go easy, buddy. Go easy.
Go easy. What?
I'm
what
kidding.
What are you alluding to? Well, here's the thing. Like, the Shock are playing back-to-back, essentially. More times than not, that doesn't work so hot for that team in question. And the Shock have been kind of shaky. That being said, you can pretty much say the same thing for the Mayhem. But lately, for the Shock, Architect has really been stepping up. He's been playing the Sombra. He's been absolutely lights out with the Widowmaker. So he finally seems to be in a good place right now where he's starting to gel with the Shock. But not to be outdone, we have Saya player from the Mayhem, who has really been the highlight player for the Florida Mayhem. So I am really curious to see who's going to get the edge in that one. I think in the Widow duel I might tilt it in Saya player's favor, but I don't think the Mayhem are going to have enough tools to deal with the Shock in this one. We open up on Temple of Anubis. Assault is by far the Shock's best game mode, so I'm expecting them to open up with the map going on there. And they're playing on Blizzard World, and, Mayhem just haven't quite figured out Blizzard World yet. So I'm expecting them to go down 0-2, leading into halftime. And then, we'll start to see some Tavik on the Junkrat, bring things back over on Nepal. But I'm expecting this one to end 3-1, and I'm still tilting for the San Francisco Shock in this one. I think the Mayhem will take a map. They tend to always get at least one for the most part. So, I'm just looking forward to the Widow duel. I mean, you have two players that have been on the rise, an Architect and Saya player. But it could just come down to, who has a better showing out of that secondary DPS role between Tavik and Sinatra or Dante, depending on whoever they're fielding in this series.
All right, very good. Looking forward to that one. Ednar, on Thursday, May 5th at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we do have the Boston Uprising trying to keep their streak alive versus the Los Angeles Valiant, your secondary team when you're in a pinch with the Mayhem. So this has, really potential to be a really fun game, and definitely, something on the line. Not necessarily playoff spots for either of these teams, but definitely some bragging rights, some streaks. What do you think?
Well, all right, yeah. Well, I mean, of course, it's my secondary team. I gotta cheer for at least one team that can win a match, and I mean, this match, I don't think it will affect the Valiant or Boston, obviously, when it comes to making the playoffs, but it will have the biggest implications regarding other teams making the playoffs. And I think that's what this map is going to come down to. I mean, I don't think Boston's going to lose. I think Boston, personally, will go undefeated. But I think Valiant's going to put up a good enough fight that they are going to knock a few people out of contention. I mean, if you look at their last match, which was, I think, week 1? Was it week 1? They went 3-2 with them. I mean, Boston won that one, but Valiant put up a good fight. I think Valiant are going to do the same. It could be 3-1. I'm gonna stick with 3-2 though. I think Boston wins, obviously, but I think Valiant puts up a good fight, knowing they need to keep people at bay. And if they do that, if they lose 3-2, that clinches them. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be able to come back and beat and knock them out of the playoffs if they go 3-2 against Boston. So I think Boston wins 3-2 on this one.
Definitely sounds like it will be close. It will be fun. And I don't know. I'm kind of cheering for the streak to break. I'm very anti-Boston streaks ever since the Patriots, lost that streak in the Super Bowl.
To that point, though, like, watch them go undefeated and then lose whoever they pick for the playoffs.
In the stage playoffs. Yeah, that would be even worse. So, well, I mean, as we round out Thursday, May 5th at 8 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Dallas Fuel versus the New York Excelsior. Two teams that kind of almost couldn't be further apart from polar opposites. One team locked into the playoffs, one of the best in the league, versus a team that is a fan favorite, but they've struggled all year. And I was really trying to think here, guys, like what two players do we need to focus in on to really extract the most intense experience from this matchup? Like, how do we do that? So I've kind of come down to two players, and there's a lot of stakes, a lot of stakes on the line here, guys. This is a big deal for these two players, and they're going head to head for the MVP vote, and that's JJoNak and Libero, because that's really the only matchup to watch. Is who's gonna while out more in this matchup and try to get ahead in the MVP vote. Because certainly Dallas Fuel, if they take a map, I will be surprised. But this is a hard 4-0 for me for New York.
JJoNak basically is like, I'm not going to tell you over Consort Discord orb. Screw you, Libero.
Yeah, he's like, the MVP will be mine. I don't know.
The thing that I will say about this match is there's one thing in particular that stands out, and that's the fact that we have one of the Zenyatas in the Overwatch League that dies the most, going up against the Zenyatta that does the most killing in the Overwatch League. So which side is that going to tilt towards? New York, hands down. Like,
you're right. Yeah. That's what I mean. It really is an opportunity for the MVP and nothing else. Like, nothing else for New York they have to prove. And that honestly may affect how bad they stomp Dallas, because now there's like that personal element to it. I don't know. All right. I digress. Anyway, I see Ednar. Do you have something else there, bud?
I was just going to say, I'm looking at New York, their schedule for the week, and I'm just like, if anybody has the cakewalk schedule in going into the playoff, it is the New York Excelsior. Like, they could basically put in their 6 backups and be like, we're good. We're going to still 4-0, and we're going to roll through the playoffs.
Yeah, and oh god, and that's actually a good segue because that we will get there just one moment as we head to Friday, May 6th. We talk about the 4 p.m. slot. So right before New York plays at 4 p.m., we've got the Gladiators versus the Boston Uprising. As long as Boston wins the day before against the Valiant, they have to go up against another LA team and try to keep that streak alive. Totem, break this down. What do we got going on here?
I mean, for me, this is the game of the week. We have Boston, again, looking to go undefeated this stage. And they have, two playoff teams, basically, for their matches this week, which is a primer to the actual playoffs as well. But, you Boston come in right in that wave of momentum. The Gladiators kind of a little bit shaky. They've been taking some recent Map 5 performances. And if we look at the map pool, we have Volskaya, so, Boston hasn't dropped a single map on Volskaya. LA Gladiators still doing pretty good on that map as well, just not the same dominance compared to Boston. But looking at the rest of the maps, there's also a staple match for the Gladiators in this one, because we are going to be going to Nepal. And the Gladiators are 7-1 on that map. So I think the Gladiators' best chance here is if they can figure out how to deal with Volskaya, which is a tall task because no one is beaten, the Boston on net. They could come out with a huge win, but I'm expecting Boston to come out. I think they'll take a 2-0 lead going into halftime. But then we go to Nepal in 66, and Boston's kind of been on both of those maps, so I'm expecting this one to go to another Game 5, which, I mean, that's what the Gladiators are kind of known for nowadays. But I think the Widowmaker match in particular is going to be one to look for here. Surefour has been pretty solid, better than Plaid even, to go back. But he's been putting in top 5 stats throughout the entire stage on a Widowmaker, and he's playing with such composure and confidence now that we didn't really see from him earlier on, because he was kind of inconsistent, at least in prior stages, on that role. We've seen for the Gladiators Bishu's improvements as of late, being pretty noteworthy. Maybe, he's not being mentioned in the same name as Note, who has really been one of the standouts amongst all of the Diva players, but Bishu's been putting in some serious work. But this is going to be a pretty tall task because he's got to deal with Striker, and Striker's just been tearing up and playing a very elite level of Tracer. Basically just going, toe-to-toe with Sabiel, being the best Tracers in the league every time they're going up against one another. I think if the Gladiators can, even out the series, take it to a Map 5, then, Boston and how they play control, they've just been so dominant. I couldn't favor the Gladiators in a control, mode in any fashion. So I think Boston, at the end of the day, they're going to cap off that undefeated streak. They'll finish 10-0, and they'll do so defeating the Gladiators 3-2.
Wow. Gladiators will keep it close. Like you were saying earlier, they're a team that always, manages to take it to that Game 5, but Boston, it sounds like, will squeak out on top. Ednar, as we head to 6 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, May 6th. Here's the match you were talking about. The cakewalk continues for New York as they step over another team. But is that the trap? Is that the reason that Shanghai has a shot in this? Is they're being overlooked? New York doesn't have much to play for except for MVP votes. I mean, is that going to be effective?
No. I mean, if they do anything other than 4-0, I'll be shocked. If there was a way they could 5-0 a team, I feel New York could pull it off. It's like the elusive 5-run home run. New York could pull it off in this match. Yes, everyone wants to cheer for Shanghai, and they're gonna get a win, not this stage, and not against New York. New York is basically playing for, they're gonna go out there so relaxed. They're we get to pick who we get to play in the playoffs. They're just gonna have fun, and they're just gonna roll. You're gonna see fun comps from New York in this match. You're gonna see weird comps from New York in this match, and Libero I mean, Libero, like you said, Libero and Jonak are going to be competing for that MVP spot. So you know they're going to try and like, all right, I'm going to chase them a little bit farther than I should to get that kill, or do something extra flashy. And it's New York, they're going to pull it off. I mean, if Shanghai takes a map off them, consider it a massive success. Like, I don't think they're going to do it, but if they could somehow pull a map off, then they should be throwing a party.
If there is one series I want to see the Dragons win, it is this one.
Yeah.
Because this would be like the least thought of scenario that could happen if Shanghai were to get the first win, is beating the best team in the league. And I just feel like if that were to happen, that momentum could just propel them. Probably not throughout the rest of the season, because, you know, their season's already over. But like, I feel like that would be
next season,
like so momentous for a team like that. But I don't think it's gonna happen. But it just makes you question, like, well, what would that do to New York's psyche? What would that do for Shanghai being able to say, I was one of the teams that beat New York when they've only lost like 3 matches? Like, that would just be surreal. A pipe dream, but surreal.
I mean, it would also come down to, all right, was New York giving it their all? Like, was New York truly trying? They already had the playoffs clinched. They already had the #1 spot clinched. Like, were they really giving it their all?
Asterisks or not, if the Shanghai Dragons walk away with the win from the New York Excelsior, regardless of all the extenuating circumstances, they feel great. And it does carry momentum into next season, not stage 4.
Oh yeah, no.
You know,
it will be great for Shanghai. I don't think it will affect New York at all.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
New York is going to be like, who cares? Like, we're the best team. We know it. You all know it.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Like, nothing negative that will linger on. So, rounding out Friday on May 6th at 8 p.m. Pacific time, we do have the London Spitfire versus my hashtag soulmate Soul Dynasty. And the shame is real. Like, it is so funny. London versus Seoul at the end of stage 3. This seems like basically we're trying to figure out who's got a higher seed for the stage playoffs. No, that is not at all the conversation we're having. I mean, we're trying to figure out which one of these teams, if either, even mathematically is still alive. And I guess, yes, both are mathematically still alive, but that's mathematically is a strong term there. They need a lot of things to go in their favor for their own schedules. They need a lot of things to go in favor with other schedules. So what they don't need is to play each other, and that's exactly what they're doing during this crucial week. Seoul is definitely in a better position, so they have a lot more to be playing for. They really ideally need to 4-0 sweep the London Spitfire, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. There's too much inconsistency on Seoul's roster. There's not enough stabilization when it comes to not only which players are playing, but how picks are being managed. It just seems like a lot of very weird and questionable decisions. This is not the time to experiment. This should be the time to be refining strategies, and both these teams are kind of reeling this stage. So where to watch, what to look for, I guess to me, one of the biggest things is it really just depends on which version of Seoul shows up. If it's the version that showed up against New York and lost 4-0, we're in big trouble. If it's the version that was gritty and stuck it out against Philly, they got a chance. But it really pains me to say that I think this is a close series either way. And I think London is going to just pull it out with the consistency from Profit and Gesture, and we're done. And Seoul is going to lose and be eliminated after this, and it's going to be a heartbreaker. But it's just, guys, it's not as close as it used to be. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to that, you know, on top of, you know, the struggles that we have had with London, you know, both of these teams have the same record throughout the season. I mean, this is... I mean, here, this will put things in perspective. When we look at the overall map differential, despite having the same record, There's a plus 19 map differential between the two teams. London Spitfire sit at plus 35, and Seoul sits at plus 16. Both of them are 18 and 10 currently. But that is a huge discrepancy. I mean, I would say, like, overall, like, you know, a lot of these teams are, like, 16 to 18 wins, so it's kind of hard to say whether or not both are going to make the playoffs, like, at the end of the season. But if you're Seoul, you absolutely need to not get 4-0'd again to London, because that's been happening way too often. And if there is a time to beat London, or at least put up a better fight against London, it will be now, because London is not going to have Birdrain in the lineup, you know, because he's injured right now. So, you know, could the streak be broken? Hard to say, but, like, both of these teams have been very inconsistent as of late. So, you know, with that being said, like, maybe this could be Seoul's chance to get one back, or at least take a map or two. But, like, this is on paper. Like, regardless of who's in, like, I can't feel confident even giving Seoul a map. Yeah. Like, I just think London has figured Seoul out.
It's just weird that those type of relationships do exist in that math. Like, you know, what is it? Oh my gosh, I'm dropping what it's called, but redactive property or whatever, I'm dropping it. But, you know, it doesn't always work. Transient properties. Forgive me. Thank you. I got it now. But with this instance, when you have like a team with a history of not performing well against another team, that's not transient property. That truly is a matchup type of situation. So it's pretty scary for me as a Seoul fan going into Friday. But as we round out Saturday, the last little bit of our normal play for Stage 3, we have at the 1 p.m. Pacific slot, the Shanghai Dragons versus the London Spitfire. Totem, take us home on this one.
Okay, so if you're Shanghai, this is basically the lambs being fed to the slaughter. I mean, they face New York and London. Like, that's tough for any team. I don't care who you are, especially Shanghai. But, you know, Shanghai was able to take Philadelphia Fusion to a Map 5. They have kind of done the unthinkable in that regard. Yes, they're still looking for their first win. Can they take a map off of London? Maybe. 2? I think that's too much of a stretch. You know, they have not picked up a win on either Temple of Anubis or Nepal this season. Spitfire, you know, they're undefeated right now on Numbani, so that leaves us with Junkertown, aka the map that doesn't really count. Which has been, you know, kind of Shanghai's kind of middle-of-the-road map. So I'm going to give them Junkertown. I think, you know, the oddity of that map is going to propel them to get a map win, and it will end 3-1 in favor of London. But Dragons, hate to say it, you're going winless for yet another stage.
Well, I mean, if you wanted that Rudy story of Shanghai taking down New York to happen, and it doesn't, they do get a mulligan. They get a chance to take down another big-name Korean roster. Not the same caliber as New York, but, you know, they've got another chance. As we move on from Saturday, we have at 3 p.m. Pacific, Seoul Dynasty finishing off this stage versus the Houston Outlaws. Two teams still kind of alive. At this point, we're not sure if either of these teams will still be alive in playoffs. But Ednar, what do you have to say about this matchup?
Well, I mean, this one, it's either going to mean everything or it's going to mean absolutely nothing. There is no middle ground. Like, at this point, both of these teams will probably be knocked out if I'm playing the odds. But if they aren't both knocked out, they both have a shot. So this could be a huge map, and it's going to be interesting because, I mean, it's, you know, your Seoul Dynasty. You know, it's your team. And I am not going to disappoint, and I think Seoul will actually win this one. Mainly because of the last map. I think in Route 66, Houston is trash on Route 66. Like, they are just trash on Route 66. So, like, going into Game 4, if Seoul has at least one win, they're going to win Route 66. And then I'm assuming they'll ride that momentum into Game 5 if they only have one win going into map 4. I mean, Seoul doesn't, I mean, they're not the best at the other maps, but they're not bad. They have like a 50-50 win rate on most of those maps that they have played because they're playing Anubis, Numbani, and Nepal before that. And I think they're about 50-50 on that, but so is Houston. So it will be real close for those three, and then you get to the last map, and you know, Houston's 2-7 on that map. So yeah, they're not good. So I think I'm gonna go Seoul 3-1 on this one. And if it means anything, Seoul will make the playoffs based on this match. If they're already not knocked out, like more than likely they're not even playing.
They're gone at this point.
Yeah, they're gone.
I like your wishful thinking, Ednar. You're too kind, to Seoul fans. I like the way you think.
If it actually means something, they're gonna get into the playoffs with this win.
I want to add on to this real quick, because you joke about Houston on Route 66, and I'll have you know, they have won back-to-back Route 66s. I know they're the only 2 wins that they have, but granted, in both of those wins, like, on one of them they only got the first checkpoint. On the other one, they got the second checkpoint. But Seoul is 7-2 on Route 66. So, Flame can joke about, oh, well, we're on a win streak now, which is true. They've looked a little bit better on the map, but I wouldn't say it's a shoe-in at this point. But I agree with Slambo. I think Seoul is out at this point. But Houston is one of those teams where, Seoul and Houston always play each other very close. So this one could really tilt in either favor, I think.
Well, to really kind of like a game that's in the perfect place, the last game of the week, Saturday, May 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, is the Los Angeles Valiant versus the Philadelphia Fusion. Both teams, again, mathematically alive. And going into this week, let's say the Valiant doesn't have a really good time against Boston, and the Gladiators and Houston end up having a slightly better weeks. This match can be huge. Just the differential, the outcome, and how it can impact the rest of the playoff standings is enormous. Fusion is going to have a pretty tough road to make this match matter. So by the time they get here, a lot of other stuff has to fall in their favor. But Valiant, they're the ones that are kind of coasting, so they need to be careful. And if this game has a lot on the line, I can see Philadelphia playing a huge spoilers, just popping off. Carpe at the top of the MVP vote, just having his way with the back line of Valiant, and maybe something crazy happens and Philadelphia knocks, the Valiant down, or knocks Valiant out of the stage playoffs. It's possible, but that's just, again, really exciting about the placement of this game, is that both of these teams are going to be meeting at this point in the stage. So very, very good timing on that front. And I have enjoyed seeing Snillo being added to the Philadelphia Fusion roster. Again, I always talk a lot about what I enjoy or the fun factor to there, and that's a huge piece of that Philadelphia Fusion roster right now when he is out and playing. And that all being said, I have to make a pick on this, right? And I feel like, again, this can mean a lot more. We can have a lot more going on with this matchup, but no matter what my instincts say is this will be close, and Valiant will come away 3-2, basically pulling that last little bit off map 5, 100 to 100, 0.3, and going in their favor. But hairline finish for Valiant, and that's going to wrap us up for the games, Totem.
Well, that is outside of the stage playoffs, which are going to be taking place on Sunday. And
a whole lot of TBD, my friend.
That is true, but, just as a reminder, guys, they did expand the playoffs on Sunday for this current stage, so, just to refresh in everyone's memory, we have the number 1 seed, more than likely is going to be, I I'm not going to say it's a lock for Boston. I mean, just based off of their current schedule, because they do have two very, tough matches. So, Boston going into this week, they have a plus 15 map differential. We have Excelsior, who have lost one more game than them, but they have a better map differential at plus 16. So, depending on where things fall, either Boston's going to be the top dog or New York. I mean, that's really the only two options. So, whoever comes out on top between those two teams is going to have the opportunity to pick an opponent of their choosing, whether it's the second seed, the third seed, or the fourth seed. Then obviously, the other two teams, whoever they are, will be facing one another, and then the winner of match 1 will go up against match 2. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on, one, who is going to end up the top seed. I think we're probably all going to be in agreement that it's probably going to be Boston. But regardless, I want to get your guys' thoughts and mentality when it comes to the picking your opponent aspect of this. Out of the lot, who do you think would be the softest matchup? Or do you think there's a possibility that maybe they'll just try to take out the tougher opponent first, that way they're not warmed up? Because in the past, we have seen teams pick who they thought would be a soft opponent, only to get bitten in the ass. So, I mean, this is basically a head game. Like, do you pick the easy match? Do you choose who you feel is going to be the toughest opponent regardless, just to try to get them out of the way? What philosophy do you go with?
I have the most boring answer. It's a double-edged sword. You really can't go wrong. You can't go right. If you pick the lower-seeded team, then you're viewed as more pressure because now you need to beat the team you're supposed to beat. If you play the harder team, then people are going to expect you to have some kind of secret, some kind of formula to beat them, because that's why you picked them, right? You knew you could beat them on this map. You had a reason why that you did that. So I feel like, to me, no matter what a team does in this situation, there really isn't going to be a right or a wrong answer. But, to them, they're going to be a reason why. But again, to me, I don't think psychologically it's going to make you, like, doing one or the other is not going to relieve any pressure. Both are going to add pressure to you no matter what. It's going to be a matter of which one adds less pressure and which one makes you feel more comfortable. And I really wonder how much the players get to weigh in on this, or if it's just a coaching, decision. Anyway, that's a whole nother thought, but I guess that's all I got.
I mean, me personally, I think it's gonna, like you said, Boston gonna be the number 1 seed, and if I was Boston, I choose New York, and the reason I say they choose, not so much to take down the other big gun, it's more or less to weaken the other two teams. Because when Valiant and the Gladiator play each other, because that's who I'm thinking I think it's gonna be Boston, New York, and the two LA teams. When LA teams play each other, they go all out. They pull out all stops. They go to 3-2. You want to weaken the other teams. And if you put New York, let's say, versus the Gladiators, well, the Gladiators are probably going to lose to New York Excelsior pretty handedly, just because of the style of play. And I think Boston will beat Valiant probably pretty easily in that instance, and then it will just be Boston versus New York. Well, if it's going to be Boston versus New York in the first round or the second round, I don't think it really matters to Boston as much, because I think if they pick them round 1, they can prepare for them a little better. And then let the other two teams bash against each other, and then they play the team who wins that, but they're going to be weaker and they're going to be more tired. They're going to be exhausted, emotionally drained from that matchup of the two LA teams. So that is my strategism behind saying that Boston should take New York, and vice versa. New York, if they end up being the 1 seed, should pick Boston. I just think the two LA teams need to fight each other in the first round.
So basically, you were going for the straight to the jugular
Yep.
method.
I mean, they're gonna have to beat Boston's gonna have to beat New York, and New York's gonna have to beat Boston.
More than likely, yeah.
More than likely in either the first round or the second round. Might as well make it the first round and fight a weaker opponent in the second round.
Yeah, it's definitely a kind of a forged by fire kind of look at it. I mean, no matter what, they're going to have a tough match, but obviously the toughest match for both of those teams is going to be against one another. So, I mean, like, with this new format, it's kind of harder for us on the podcast to, like, kind of, like, weigh in on, okay, it's going to be, well, we know what this team's going to be in the weigh-in, you know? Because now it's basically like, okay, well, like, we don't know who's going to be the top seed, we don't know who they're going to choose, we don't know who the other two teams are going to be, so we can't really do that. So that being said, I think the best thing to do is just say, like, who we think is going to be playing in the grand finals for the stage, and who think will ultimately take the stage finals. And, you know, I don't think Boston will just straight out pick New York or vice versa. I can see the reason behind it. Like New York would be looking for redemption. Boston basically just trying to prove that it wasn't a fluke. Because, you know, yes, they were riding a ton of momentum, but, like, they came out with the strat, and they absolutely nailed it. You know, we've seen some other teams adapt that same strategy, you know, trying to dive on top of Jonak and really pressure him, and it's worked out great for the most part, but those teams haven't been able to do what Boston did. Yes, they've been forcing New York to a mat 5, but New York has still been squeaking out the wins, even if it was by stopping the reverse sweep multiple times in a week. So, I don't know, like, Sambo, since you've just returned to us, we're guessing who we think is going to be in the grand finals for the stage, and then choosing our stage champion. So
I think that you're going to see New York and Boston end up being in the final for the stage playoffs, and I think New York is going to really handle them. Boston's had a nice flash in the pan. They've had a great stage, but it's just a different tempo. It's a different feel in those playoff games, and New York has far more experience from their time in Apex all the way until their time in the Overwatch League. So just when it comes down to that playoff experience, New York is going to have that edge. And even with the momentum of Boston, I think that uprising will be stopped.
yeah, I would have to agree. I don't think we'll see Boston pick New York or vice versa for that first match. And if you're Boston, like, you kind of look at the Gladiators, and you know Gladiators kept it close the last time they played. The Valiants haven't looked so hot. You know, Boston had 4-0 with them. I'm trying to see if there was another series between the two. There was a 3-2. So, like, I think you're getting about an equal matchup either way, but I feel like the Gladiators, based off of recent performances, would be the softer matchup between the two LA teams. So I think Boston will choose the Gladiators. They should be able to take that. More than likely will be a 3-1 in favor of Boston. And then New York will go up against a Valiant. That should be another 3-1, maybe even a 4-0, depending on which Valiant show up, because that's one of those teams that 4-0s or gets 4-0'd, and I think against New York, it's more than likely going to be the latter. But I'm expecting New York to come out on top of the stage again. And, you know, I love seeing what Boston has been able to do. And the last time they faced New York, you know, they got to Jonak. Now that New York is going to have more time to prepare for that Boston match, I think the result is going to be different. I think they might still be able to get to Jonak initially, but we'll see that adaptability really come through, and I think New York is going to end up taking a very close series. So I'm going with my guns. I'm sticking with New York again, and bear in mind, I am 2 for 2 so far on stage champion, so I'm looking to extend that streak. But Ednar, what do you think we're going to see for the stage finals?
I like the humble brag there, the 2 for 2.
Humble. Humble. Okay. All right.
Well, someone's been back in New York all season.
I still think that, like I said earlier, is Boston or New York, whoever's the 1 seed, will choose either Boston or New York to face in round 1. And so I think it's going to be New York versus the Valiants in the finals, with New York winning. I think New York wins either way. If I was to pick any team to win, I think it's going to be New York. But I think it's going to be New York versus the Valiant. Possibly the Gladiators, but I think it's going to be New York versus an LA team in the finals. And New York coming out probably 3-1.
All right, well, you heard it here first. We are all back in New York this stage. So, Boston, you've been hot. Can you keep the momentum into the playoffs? Because, in sports, we see that a lot. Teams come in right in that wave of momentum, and then as soon as they get to the playoffs, they choke. And that's not the first impression you would want to leave on your fan base when you make it to the playoffs. So that's going to have a lot of pressure.
They're making the playoffs.
This is true.
It's not like, they're a dynasty. Oh.
Or Florida.
Hey, yeah, no. We suck so bad.
Dallas.
We're not even in the playoff picture. I would dare say New York has become a dynasty. No.
They've won, twice, or are on the verge of winning twice. So, I think it's too early though. I do think the dynasty name in itself, little too early. Hasn't panned out that way.
The sole semi-decent. We'll go with that.
Well, they don't even call NYXL the Excelsior, so they probably wouldn't stick with the name anyway, regardless of what it would be. But that is pretty much going to do it for us here tonight on Overwatch League Network, guys. If you want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to leave us a review over on iTunes or your podcast and app of choice. Any feedback or constructive criticism is always welcomed, just because that will offer us some insight on how we can make for a better listening experience for you guys. We do have another game night coming up. That will be on May 19th, so join us at 7 p.m. Pacific Time for another night of friendly community competitive games, and we will be streaming that live over on our Twitch channel, which hopefully you're at right now. I'll be streaming that. And an update on our Pick'em League. Again, guys, I plug this every week. We have stage prizes and end-of-season prizes, and an update on the host stand-ins. So this week I did a little bit differently. I posted, our season scores and then our weekly score. So, overall, I'm still in first. 55,150. Slambo, my soulmate, is in second.
I was close, and then I slipped again.
54,050. And then Spider, our resident Shanghai Dragon, so lowly down in third place, sitting with 44,600. But if we look at the weekly, I finished this week with 4,550 points. Spider edged you out with 4,050, and Sambo, you had 4,000. So pretty close overall this week. I think it was week 3 I ended up going 11-1 with winners, and then this week it was 10-2. So it's pretty good overall, but Spider's not going anywhere. But I think you'll be able to make up the ground. Because we've seen those first few weeks, there's a ton of momentum shifts when when a meta's kind of getting situated. So still plenty of time left in the upcoming 6 weeks. But Spider isn't here, so he can't read off all of our lovely ways that you can get a hold of us. So Slambo, why don't you do the honors? Where can people find us over on the social media?
Well, on social media, you can always send us an email, owlnshow@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and or Instagram @OWLNshow. Our website is www.owlnshow.com. Our YouTube channel is a bunch of jarbled stuff because we don't have 100 subscribers yet, but we're close. We're getting there. We're 20-ish away from getting our own customized link, but we will have a link to our YouTube page in the show notes. Our Discord is discord.me/OWLN show. Twitch.tv/OWLN show is where we are live Mondays, 7 p.m. Pacific time for Overwatch League Network. We also have the Back Cap Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific. Heroes Never Die Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then starting May 15th, the Back Cap and Heroes Never Die are swapping places. So Heroes Never Die will be live Wednesdays at 5, and Back Cap is going to go Thursdays at 7. And that's it for us. Totem, talk about yourself.
All right, well, you can find me over on the Twitter. That's at Little Bluebird, usually trolling Dallas Fuel fans, at Totally Drunk CTR. If I do stream, it's over on this channel. Spider's not here, so, I mean, if you want to find him, outside of third place in Pick'ems, you can find him on Twitter, at SpiderGD, and he does stream occasionally over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpiderGD. And Edinar, my co-host from HND, where can people get a hold of you over on the social media?
Well, you can find me on the Little Bluebird at EdnarOW. And then same exact thing on Twitch at twitch.tv/EdnarOW.
All right, and Soulmate, where can people get a hold of you?
Well, they can always find me on Twitter at SlamboverWatch or twitch.tv/Slambo. And I'm glad. I felt better by the end of the episode. Like I was feeling kind of down there and a little at times, but by the end of it, I'm feeling pretty good.
All right, let's go for another show then. Let's just lead right into peer into the future. No, we're not doing that, guys. We're going to wrap it up here tonight on Overwatch League Network. Again, this has been episode 31. And thank you so much for filling in. It's always good to have you on another show in our umbrella. And, hopefully this won't be the first time. But for now, guys, enjoy the Overwatch League games. Cheer on Shanghai against the two Korean juggernauts. Will them to their first victory. No matter how inconceivable that might end up being, it could happen. This could be the week. Probably not, but you never know, guys. We will see you back on Wednesday for the Back Cap. Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to the Overwatch League Network. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at OWLN Show. The theme music for OWLN is the main theme and victory theme guitar remix by Michael Mack.